The last 2 weeks weren't good for Matt Stetar, but they were even worse for those who loved him. Secrets surfaced, trust shattered, and in the wreckage, a question lingers. Could this tragedy have been stopped? Strap in. This is a ride you won't forget. Matt Stetar was born into a small, tight-knit community in rural Ohio, where the amber waves of grain stretched farther than the eye could see. The quiet beauty of his surroundings, a patchwork of golden fields under a vast open sky, instilled in him a profound appreciation for both nature and the universe's intricate workings. As a child, his world was filled with marvels: the way sunlight glinted off dewdrops, the sound of cicadas buzzing on hot summer days, and the inexplicable magic of watching seeds grow into towering cornstalks. This environment sparked an infectious curiosity in Matt. He was an inventor by nature, forever poised with a screwdriver in one hand and a dream in the other. His early days were marked by spontaneous projects that filled his family's backyard, a network of tree forts, makeshift science experiments involving everything from vinegar and baking soda to rudimentary circuits made from old flashlights. His vivid imagination transformed the mundane into the extraordinary. Ordinary cardboard boxes became rocket ships, and old bicycles were disassembled and reconfigured into contraptions that could only be described as freestyle engineering. At family gatherings, he'd earn a mix of admiration and exasperation as he explained his latest brainstorm about a contraption that could harvest rainwater or a device that could clean the air around him. As he progressed through school, Matt's reputation as a prodigious talent only grew. In middle school, he joined the science club, where his enthusiasm quickly propelled him to leadership positions. By high school, he was known as the star of the robotics team, a position that not only celebrated his technical prowess, but also highlighted his natural ability to inspire his peers. His charisma and innovative spirit earned him the nickname, the Inventor, and he was a pivotal force in guiding the team to several state championships. Those successes opened doors for him, culminating in a prestigious scholarship to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, an achievement that felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. While friends and teachers viewed his acceptance as a triumphant culmination of hard work and talent, Matt felt the weight of expectation pressing down upon him. The anxiety he had managed to keep at bay throughout his teenage years began to bubble to the surface. As he prepared for his move to MIT, he wrestled with a plague of self-doubt. Questions spiraled in his mind. What if I'm not as smart as everyone thinks? And what if I can't keep up with my peers? These internal battles took a toll, yet he silenced them with more ambition and a focus on success. At MIT, the academic rigor was vastly different. Surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the country, Matt felt a mix of awe and intimidation. He threw himself wholeheartedly into his coursework, devouring complex subjects in electrical engineering and robotic systems. It was here that Matt encountered the darker side of his relentless pursuit of excellence. The anxiety that had been lurking just beneath the surface began to manifest more aggressively. Late-night study sessions turned into marathon weekends. Early successes soon felt like the foundation of a house built on shaky ground. Despite the accolades and accomplishments, each moment of triumph was often accompanied by the gnawing fear of failure. It felt like a precarious balancing act, striving to excel while grappling with the constant worry that one slip might send him tumbling. Matt's peers thrived on collaboration and shared ideas, but he frequently found solace in solitude, burying himself in projects instead of engaging in social connection. The isolation compounded his anxiety, a quiet spiral that threatened to overshadow the dreams he had so painstakingly built. As finals week approached in his sophomore year, the pressure reached a boiling point. The fear of disappointing not only himself, but also the hopes of those in his small hometown clawed at him. Matt began experiencing panic attacks, moments where the crushing weight of expectations became too heavy to bear. His nights were often sleepless, filled with racing thoughts of inadequacy that would echo endlessly in the void. Friends began to notice his withdrawal, but he skillfully masked his turmoil with a bright smile and excuses that crowded out the truth. Little did anyone know, the very ambition that propelled him forward, once a source of pride, would become a double-edged sword, unraveling his dreams just as they seemed within reach. As Matt sat in his dorm room, surrounded by books and half-finished projects, he faced the grim reality that to truly excel, he needed to confront the tangled web of anxiety that threatened to ensnare him. Would he find the resolve to acknowledge his struggles, or would he continue the solitary pursuit of perfection that had begun to consume him? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in his room, Matt realized that in order to change the world, he first had to learn to change himself. At MIT, Matt thrived. at first. The elation of being surrounded by some of the brightest minds in the country was intoxicating. He dove headfirst into his studies and projects, embracing the challenges that pushed the boundaries of his creativity. He designed solar-powered drones that not only showcased his technical prowess, but also aligned with his desire to contribute positively to the environment. Alongside his academic pursuits, he dedicated time to mentoring underprivileged teens in Boston, sharing his passion for science and engineering with those who may not have access to the same opportunities he had enjoyed. For a season, it seemed like he was fulfilling his childhood dreams, embodying the archetype of the young innovator who would change the world. But this golden period proved to be fleeting. The relentless pressure to excel soon consumed him, morphing what was once a joyful exploration into a high-stakes game where failure felt utterly intolerable. His routine shifted as sleepless nights turned into weeks devoid of rest. The exhilaration of achievement was overshadowed by an ever-present anxiety that gnawed at him, whispering cruel doubts in moments of stillness. Panic attacks, those sudden spikes of overwhelming terror, began to invade his life, making even simple tasks feel insurmountable. Desperately trying to maintain the facade of a confident, capable student, Matt hid his turmoil away, fearing that any glimpse of vulnerability would shatter the genius persona that both he and others had come to admire. In a world that celebrated success, admitting to struggling felt like an admission of defeat. He became adept at putting on a brave face, laughing off concerns from his peers, insisting he was fine when inside he felt anything but. Then, during his junior year, tragedy struck. Matt's father passed away unexpectedly. His loss felt like a seismic shift in the foundation of Matt's world. The man who had cheered him on through every science fair and robotics competition was gone, leaving a void that only deepened his sense of isolation. Grief-stricken and burdened by an unshakable weight, Matt found himself spiraling into darkness. The dreams he had once carried with such fervor felt like distant echoes. In an attempt to numb the pain and maintain a semblance of control, Matt began self-medicating with prescription pills, a decision that initially brought fleeting relief, but soon became a crutch that he leaned on too heavily. His grades plummeted, a stark contrast to the ambitious young man who had once soared academically. The vibrant spark in his eyes dulled, replaced by a hollow look that spoke of sleepless nights and internal battles. Friends reached out, concerned by his sudden withdrawal and the changes they observed, but Matt pushed them away, wrapping himself in layers of defensiveness. He continued to insist he was fine, bearing the heavy burden of grief and shame alone. The boy who once dreamed of saving the world was now fighting just to save himself. The weight of unprocessed grief coupled with anxiety and addiction intertwined in a vicious cycle, leading him further down a path of despair. The laughter, passion, and eagerness that had defined his early college years were replaced by silence and isolation. He navigated a world that felt increasingly unmanageable, dangling precariously on the edges of an identity he could no longer recognize. In the shadows of his mind, however, a flicker remained, a small, stubborn glimmer that held onto the hope that he could reclaim his life before it slipped away entirely. It was this seed of resilience that would eventually lead him to confront his demon, to seek help, and to find a way back to the dreams he once cherished. But the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, and for the first time, Matt would need to learn that true strength lay not in stoicism, but in the brave act of reaching out for support. After dropping out of MIT, Matt returned home, a shell of his former self. His bright and ambitious spirit had been extinguished, replaced by an overwhelming darkness that seemed to suffocate. The dreams he had once harbored of changing the world felt like distant memory, cruel reminders of the person he used to be. He spiraled into addiction, his descent into dependency a gradual one, marked by the relentless pursuit of a high that could momentarily numb the pain and anxiety that plagued him. Cycle after cycle of rehab and relapse left him feeling defeated, a perpetual prisoner of his own demons. Every failed attempt at recovery merely underscored the feeling that he was irredeemable, that the person he once was irretrievable. The weight of his addiction fell squarely on the shoulders of those he had once loved and admired. His mother, once a pillar of strength, now found herself shouldering the financial burden of his misadventures. She sacrificed family heirlooms, treasures passed down through generations, to pay off the debts Matt had accumulated through a series of ill-advised bets and poor investments. With each transaction, the value of their family's legacy eroded, leaving Matt feeling like a hollow shell of his former self. And the whispers began. Whispers of wasted potential whispered among his family and friends, echoing through the corridors of his mind. the label stuck, a cruel reminder of everything that had gone wrong. He became a shadow of his former self, a mere specter of the brilliant young mind that once shone like a beacon. A desperate bid to rebuild his life led Matt to take a construction job, a position he hoped would ground him and give him a sense of purpose. But the universe had other plans. A worksite accident changed the trajectory of Matt's life forever, leaving him with a shattered leg and chronic pain that gnawed at him like a relentless enemy. As the pain medication flowed, Matt found himself becoming increasingly reliant on opioids. The promise of relief was intoxicating, a fleeting escape from the anguish that now defined his existence. He was trapped in a vicious cycle of addiction, one that seemed impossible to break. By the time he turned 28, Matt's life had disintegrated into chaos. The once brilliant student and rising star was now a homeless man, forced to live beneath bridges and scrounge for scraps in alleyways. Equations that once flowed from his mind like a river now scrawled on discarded napkins, remnants of a brain that was no longer sharp. He was a shadow of his former self, a reminder to himself and others that even the most promising of futures could be reduced to nothing more than a distant memory. In a moment of raw honesty, Matt confessed to a social worker, "I just want to matter again," but the world had already written him off, relegated him to the fringes of society. His name was barely mentioned in passing conversations, a faint whisper of a once promising talent now lost forever. And yet, amidst the ruins of his shattered life, a glimmer of hope remained, a spark of determination that, though faint, refused to be extinguished. On a frigid December night, Matt stumbled into a free clinic, his body shivering beneath a tattered coat, his eyes sunken from the weight of his own struggles. The clinic was a beacon of hope in a world that had long since given up on him, a place where the broken and the battered could find a sense of solace. But on this particular night, even the clinic's doors seemed to be closed to Matt. The staff, overwhelmed by the sheer number of those in need, directed him to a shelter, but it was full. Hours ticked by, and Matt wandered the streets, his footsteps echoing off the cold pavement. He had been to this place countless times before, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the end. As the darkness closed in around him, he found himself in an alleyway, a narrow passageway between two towering buildings. It was here that he would meet his maker, a victim of a world that had failed to protect him, the syringe still clutched in his hand, a stark reminder of the demons he had fought for so long. But those who knew him best knew that Matt didn't die from the drugs themselves. He died from a world that praised his genius, yet failed to protect his humanity, a world that valued his intellect over his well-being, that saw him as a tool to be used, rather than a person to be helped. The news of Matt's passing sent shockwaves through the community. Old teachers, teammates, and even MIT professors came to pay their respects at his funeral. As snow blanketed his coffin, one question hung heavy in the air. Could we have saved him? A question that echoed through the hearts of those who had loved him, a question that would haunt them for years to come. As the mourners dispersed, carrying with them the memories of a brilliant mind and a broken soul, they couldn't help but wonder what could have been done differently. Could they have seen the signs? Could they have reached out sooner? The questions swirled in their minds like a maelstrom, each one a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of compassion. Matt's death was a tragedy, not just for his family and friends, but for the entire community. It was a stark reminder that even the most brilliant among us can fall victim to the cracks in our support systems. It was a call to action, a wake-up call to prioritize the well-being of our most vulnerable members. As the snow continued to fall, covering the city in a layer of white, it seemed to whisper a message of its own. We can do better. We can do better by those who struggle, by those who are broken, and by those who are in need. We can do better by being more compassionate, more understanding, and more willing to reach out. Matt's story may have ended in tragedy, but it can also serve as a catalyst for change. Today, Matt's story lives on, a testament to both his brilliance and the tragic fate that befell him. His notebooks, once a scatter of dreams and equations, are now filled with blueprints for sustainable energy projects that inspire a new generation of thinkers and creators. The nonprofit founded in his honor mentors struggling innovators, offering guidance and support to those who, like Matt, have the potential to change the world but may find themselves lost in their own journey. Scholarships established in his name serve not only as financial aid, but as a commitment to prioritizing mental health alongside academics. They remind students that while intellectual achievement is important, emotional well-being is just as vital. These initiatives strive to ensure that no one else has to feel as isolated and overlooked as Matt did in his darkest time. Yet, even amidst these efforts and successes, his tragedy remains a searing reminder of the vulnerabilities that lie beneath the surface of brilliance. The very nature of innovation demands a certain type of intensity, a passion that often burns too bright and too fast. Matt's life and death highlight the imperative of fostering an environment where compassion is nurtured, where individuals can thrive without fear of being consumed by their own ambitions. As we chase progress, whether in technology, education, or social initiatives, let us not forget the Matts of the world. Let us remember those who struggle to navigate the fine line between brilliance and despair, those whose light may flicker under the weight of expectation and pressure. For in their light, we see our own shadows, the darker corners of society where isolation, addiction, and mental health challenges thrive. The cost of ignoring these shadows is too steep, and Matt's legacy urges us to confront them head-on. It reminds us that compassion is not merely an afterthought, but the greatest invention of all. It is the glue that binds us together as a community. So as we strive for innovation and progress, let us advocate for understanding, support, and connection. By shining a light on mental health and creating inclusive spaces, we can ensure that no brilliant mind has to endure the silence and despair that claimed Matt's life. In honoring him, we are called not only to remember his story, but to act, to cultivate a world where every individual, regardless of their challenges, feels valued, understood, and capable of realizing their potential. Let Matt's life serve as both inspiration and a poignant call to arms, a reminder that while we may celebrate greatness, we must also uplift those who struggle, ensuring that our society thrives as a whole.